We talked about this in previous weeks, how we might do a little bit of a transfer roundup as the summer goes. Not much soccer content to talk about other than the Club World Cup when that gets a little more exciting. So we thought, why not talk about some of these transfers that have been happening? There was a little transfer window that opened up in between the end of the season and the Club World Cup. A little time for teams to, I guess, revamp their teams going into the Club World Cup for those competing, and then for those teams who weren't, I guess they were just getting their early transfers done anyway. So we saw some exciting things happen. Some of these we've known for a while. They got done like as soon as the window opened, and some of them were like coming down to the wire before the Club World Cup started. But I thought we'd just run team by team and some of the bigger transfers that have happened. Of course, there've been a ton, but these are like some more notable ones. So starting off with Liverpool, as soon as the season ended, pretty much it seemed like almost immediate that they got the signing done for Jeremy Frimpong from Leverkusen. That one, maybe it's a bit of foreshadowing for another Leverkusen signing that maybe happened a little more recently. But any thoughts about that one, just real quick? We don't have to talk about it too much, but Jeremy Frimpong to Liverpool, that one was only £35 million. So, one of the more exciting young talents in European football, and going for 35 million. That's not that much, honestly. So, any quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think 35 mil, that's actually a deal. And given how Liverpool got robbed with this next signing, I mean, I think, hey, good for them.
Yeah, fair enough. That's okay. Well, let's just jump straight. I was going to talk about Frimpong, and I'll just do a little bit. I am
go ahead.
Curious. This is more, I guess, I'm curious to see them play in the Club World Cup to see how this pans out. But tactically, Trent Alexander-Arnold, obviously we know he already signed to go to Liverpool to go to Madrid before he already knew that was happening. But he already agreed. But the style of play switching from a Trent as your right back to a Frimpong as your right back, Frimpong being a way more attacking right back, practically playing as a winger most of the time. He wants to get up the pitch, wants to be making things happen in the final third. Going from Trent, who's more of a, the position's a little more traditional, but obviously he gets on the ball and makes things happen from deeper. Pairing with Salah, getting the Salah cut in way more, practically play more centrally, and have Frimpong push up the right as like that right winger, which leaves a lot of open space potentially. I'm very curious. I guess my whole point is I'm very curious to see. This is Arne Slot's first full year, like in terms of your signings, your team. He did a lot with an inherited team last year. Now we get to see how he actually wants to play with these new players, and I'm very curious the setup, what it's going to be like if you get in Frimpong playing with Salah, and then transitioning that into the next the biggest signing of the window so far, and probably will be tough to be topped for the rest of the summer. Florian Wirtz to Liverpool. Wow. That's a ridiculous signing. We've been hearing for years. Florian Wirtz, it's only natural that once KDB leaves Man City, Wirtz is going to Man City. He's going to be the KDB heir to the throne over there in Manchester. And he said, you know what? Screw Man City, bro. And then Bayern wanted him. Bayern, when they snap their fingers, they get any German talent they want. He said, screw Bayern too. I'm a bandwagoner, bro. Liverpool just won the league. I'm hopping on that, bro. And he said, I'm going to. Now, the price, that's something to discuss. And you just said there, Alexi, that it looks like Liverpool got robbed. We're looking at a new potential transfer record in the Premier League. I think it's tough to quote the exact price because it seems like it's not official yet. He still has to do like a medical and things like that. But do you know exactly what the price is being touted to be, Alexi? I'm seeing like over 120, maybe 150 or something crazy like that.
I was trying to look it up, and that's what I recall reading when it happened. Certainly over 100. I'm inclined to say around 130.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for a player who's in his young 20s and has really only been in the Bundesliga, like making his mark there, I am really surprised. I'm not saying there's no talent there. There is certainly talent there. But this amount of money, dude. I mean, this was Anthony money. But to be serious, uh, this was money like that you would expect like big, huge players to be signing for, and I don't think it's worth it right now. I mean, unless if they are that certain that this dude is gonna go crazy in the Prem, which very well could be the case. I'm shocked that they paid this much. Also, this early on in the window, there wasn't a lot of negotiation. Either from the players' end or from the team's end. Like Liverpool was willing to pay that up front. So it certainly shows a commitment to, having him on the team, a big part of the team, and having him grow, and maybe even centering the team around him down the line, and with the sort of plays he can make. But yeah, I think there was definitely a robbery of some sorts. I would have expected a transfer like this to maybe be around like the 80 million mark, maybe 90 million tops. But what it's gone for, that's crazy.
It's wild. It's honestly wild. In terms of the talent, I do think Wirtz is one of the premier talents in Europe, especially for the age. I think he's only like 22. So we could be looking at, okay, this is Liverpool's main guy for the next 10 years. And in that sense, I mean, to be honest, no matter what it is, 120, 130, 140, wherever it ends up being, you can never truly justify that price tag unless you're really the best player in the world. And maybe they're assuming he's going to become the best player in the world by playing at Liverpool. But I think with attacking players, I hate to say it because it sounds biased against defenders or defensive midfielders like Caicedo or Declan Rice or whoever else that went for over 100 recently. But I feel like attacking players, it's easier, at least on the surface, to say, okay, he scored this many goals, he got this many assists, he justified his price tag. So I feel like Liverpool, I mean, other fans, I'm going to be saying it, even though it's not necessarily true. I'm sure you're going to be saying it as a United fan. Other fans are going to definitely dog on Liverpool if he has a slow start. They're going to be like, 120 mil, 130 mil for this. But I do think eventually...
Dude, imagine if he turns out to be Liverpool's Anthony all of a sudden.
That'd be crazy.
It's a possibility.
I'd be so shocked. I guess the biggest worry is that we haven't seen him play. He's not Premier League proven. Which is like, that's always the worry with any player. But I do think because they still have Salah, it's not all on him. I think it's different if he's coming in and like he's expected to be the number one guy off the bat. And I think honestly, if he went to City, there's some of that there because they're depending on him for all their creativity at City because we don't care about what Foden's doing. De Bruyne is gone. Haaland's just there to score goals. So if he went to City, there's more of that pressure. I feel like in Liverpool's team, you're still expecting Salah to be one of your main creative hubs. So if you have Salah coming off the right, if you have Wirtz playing like a 10, but maybe a little off the left, and then you have Frimpong bombing more as a right wing. Say they get Cherki, who's looking like who they're trying to get next. He's more of an attacking left back as well. And then you have the midfield behind them in Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai. They all do a lot of running. They could cover a lot of his potential weaknesses that give him that time to grow into the Premier League. And then we could be looking at Liverpool going back-to-back potentially, going far in the Champions League potentially. It's tough to ever truly justify that price tag, but I think playing in a team of this quality, and I think also for Liverpool, future-proofing the team past Salah, because Salah just had his best year ever, and then you never know. Next year, Salah could go back to... going back to normal for Salah is still one of the best players in the league, but he could go back to a more normal year for him. And then in 2 years, he's gone. He's at 34 or whatever, 35. He maybe go to Saudi or something. Then you still have your next guy up and who's there, who at that point, who's 2 years into the being at Liverpool is comfortable. And then you look for someone to come help him. So I like the signing. I mean, I'm always going to like the signing, but yeah, the price tag is ridiculous. But to be fair to Liverpool, they have not been spending a lot recently. Like last year, they literally only bought Chiesa, I think, in the summer, and he didn't even play. In the winter, I don't think they bought anyone. And the summer before that, maybe like Szoboszlai and Gravenberch and stuff like that. But they really haven't been spending that much. So I think they've been saving a lot of money, and they say we're going to splash it on a player we think is guaranteed. So whether or not he is, I know you have your. I think you doubt it a little more than I. But I'd be very curious.
Only just the hater in me. Only the
you got
hater
to.
in
You
me.
got as a United fan.
I got
I
to.
get it. I get it.
It's an obligation.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. But I think either way, he's definitely like the one guy. If you had to pick one guy this summer going into next year, that we're all going to be looking at, like, what is he actually going to do in this league? Because he could be the next best player in the league.
Yeah,
at least up there, you know. Because now Arsenal has Saka, Chelsea has Palmer, United has, you know, maybe they'll still have Bruno. We'll see. And Liverpool now have their creative guy, which is interesting. And speaking of the creative guy, transitioning to Manchester City, they went and got Ryan Cherki from Lyon. He played for, and you know, you're very familiar. Got to see him play against United in the Europa League semis. It was. So, you know, Ryan Cherki, talking about a creative hub. He's also one of the more intriguing, like, young talents in European football. But the interesting thing here is City got him for 35 million, I believe, which is, to me, that is daylight robbery, bro. How do City continue to get these deals, bro? I don't get it.
Because they have 115 charges, which we're still waiting on. We were supposed to hear about it in March or something. It's the summertime. What's happening? Yeah, I fully expect there are some literal mischievous dealings going on in the background with this, because that player is too talented, and we saw it most recently, I believe, what was it, the Nations League final with France and Spain, or no, that wasn't the final. Semi-final. And he had that absolutely banger of a goal, which to me was probably goal of the tournament, honestly. Him at Lyon, great player. I think at Man City, I'm upset to see him there, and I'm even more upset to see that he was trashing Man U, saying he wants to kill them, and that's why he joined City. That is kind of embarrassing, but he will be proven wrong. I'm obligated to say that. He'll be one to watch and see as he develops, because I mean, I could easily see him being a key player in like 2 years, easily.
For sure. And I think, especially losing De Bruyne, bringing in Cherki, who's just like a chance creation merchant, setting up the goal scoring merchant in Holland with another chance creation merchant. Honestly, I don't know exactly what Pep's plan is, obviously, because to be fair, they do have a lot of attacking talent still. Because you would assume Foden wants to play in those same areas. I think Grealish is on the way out, but you know, you got Savinho, Doku on the wings. You have Marmoush, who's probably going to play a second striker kind of role. So it's curious to see where exactly he's going to fit. You know, at least they have depth, but I wouldn't be surprised if we go like 10 games into the season and then all of a sudden Cherki just starting week in, week out. He's the new guy, because him feeding Holland, just the vision he has, I just think it's going to be super scary. And I think it wouldn't be beyond me to think that in 2 years we're looking at Cherki and Wirtz on the same level, as like these two are like the two of the best attacking midfielders in the league, alongside like Palmer and whoever else. But which would be crazy, because then at that point Liverpool would have potentially spent 100 million more on Wirtz than City would have spent on Cherki, which is just ridiculous to even think about. But I think it's a very exciting transfer just to see him in the Premier League, just to see how he works out. I don't want City to do well, but I'm happy for him that he got his move. I know he wanted to leave Lyon a bit now. He was loyal to them, did what he had to do, got him pretty far in the Europa League, and hopefully he'll be starting for France at least in about that place going into the World Cup next year. So I'm super excited for this. Whether or not it works out, we'll see, because you know, he's not the most defensively sound player in terms of like that work rate going back. But you never know. If he's that great in terms of creating chances, Pep just might say, okay, Rodri, because City getting Rodri back, that's basically a new signing for next year. So he's saying Rodri, I think Nico Gonzalez or something was one of their new. Bernardo Silva they still have. So that you guys, you just run. You run and you cover up, and Cherki, you could stay there and we'll get the ball back to you, and then you make something happen. I wouldn't be surprised if Pep, because back in the day, Pep used to let Messi. Messi had a little more work rate, early Messi, but still, he used to let Messi, hey man, you don't have to do any of that defensive work. You just get the ball and make something happen. I'm not saying Cherki is Messi, but
Yeah.
You wouldn't be surprised if in this system he makes it work for him. So I'm very curious.
I also just don't hope. I hope that, or don't hope that Pep, pushes him too much into the system. I hope he's able to keep that creativity, that freedom. I mean, we've seen before how that can disappear very quickly when you join a City side. So
for sure,
that'll be something to watch.
And you say Grealish, what I just mentioned. That's a great example.
Exactly. Exactly.
A player.
Although maybe it's the alcohol, maybe it's the creativity. I don't know, man.
Maybe. Hopefully he gets a move to somewhere where he can actually be a key player again. But yeah,
I'm willing to bet that he is going to Saudi.
Grealish? Oh, that'd be tough.
There's a part of me that just sees that happening. No logical reasoning, just pure vibes.
Can he drink out there? I don't even know. He might
on the low. On the low,
maybe.
Hey, man, they got golden showers and everything out there. Like they got.
Okay, move it on. That's crazy. Golden showers is crazy. But
I also all these OnlyFans people flying out for free. That's
you're thinking of Dubai, But I guess it's all in the same.
I'm just saying regionally.
Regionally, it's close enough. Yeah. Where was I even going with that? Cherki, City. We don't want him to lose his creativity. And he's one of the young players in the world that I'd love to see, who's very individual. I feel like we're getting that back in the game. Yamal, Cherki, Musiala, like players like this who like actually care about putting on a show and making things happen, not just a system pass back merchants, bro. I can't stand that.
Mm-hmm.
But one more quick signing for City that actually got confirmed as well is Ryan ait-Nouri. It's funny, they're both named Ryan. But Ryan ait-Nouri, who signed from Wolves, he is a left back / really a left wing back. He wants to get forward as well. But City also signed him, I believe, for about 35 million as well. So that's interesting because I think it means Gvardiol can play center back more, which I like to see. I mean, he has done some interesting things at left back, but I've always wanted him to really solidify himself as a center back in that City team. So we could see him and then see Ryan ait-Nouri bombing down the left wing a little bit more. So it'd be interesting to see. I don't know if you have any quick thoughts on ait-Nouri or not, but
just to say, even though the placement maybe doesn't show it, I think the Wolves team this season was entertaining to watch, and he was a part of that, certainly, as well as with the future signing we'll talk about shortly. So I could see it working out there for sure.
For sure, yeah. So I guess we'll jump over to that, and we'll come back to the one that we were going to talk about. Let's talk about the guy you just hinted at, Matheus Cunha, Wolves talisman, pretty much, for the last season. Their leading scorer, their best player, who basically carried them for most of the season. He has been confirmed to go to your guys' team, Manchester United. For I believe around 70 mil, something like that. A decent fee for him. But I'll leave this to you and see what you think about it. I have some thoughts on it as well. But you excited about this?
Look. This guy can score, man. That's all we needed. That's all we need is someone who can score. He is the one to do it. He's played fantastically at Wolves this season. I vividly remember him playing against Man U, just watching his movement, his effort, his energy, his placement. And, there are already rumors going on during the season about him potentially going to Man U. So I'm actually really happy to see that one is done. And he's another one of those players too, who is there for the club, cares about the club, And I think given the rut we are in right now, I think that potentially matters a bit more than like the performance of a player. Like obviously they still need to perform and do what we need for the team, but there are some players who have been rumored like Gyökeres, who although maybe would do well as a player, as a striker, you know, they're thinking about maybe going to Arsenal and maybe Man U, but they want European It's like, no, we need people who are committed to the club because we don't know what times are ahead. And Cunha, I think he's a great start. I think he's going to fit in really well. And I can just imagine him working so well with Mainu and with Bruno, and also just being an example for our existing strikers, aka mainly Højlund. I could see him potentially playing well with Xerxes as well. So I'm excited about this one.
That's fair. Yeah, I think that's a big signing. I don't know where United's getting all the money from. Honestly, I thought y'all were in some debt or something.
Hey man, maybe we're gonna have 115 charges too. I don't know at this point.
Something soon. If you guys sign, like obviously sign Cherki, if you guys go and get Mbeumo as well without selling anyone, then something fraudulent is going on behind the scenes. Because he's looking like a 70 million signing as well.
Well, actually, let's touch on that real quick. That is crazy. 70 mil. I'm pretty sure he has like a year left on his contract.
Hey, so they're gonna run it up. He scored 20 goals, 19 goals in the league. They're gonna run that up for sure. I think especially because you have other teams competing for him. Like I feel like Cunha was always going to United right out the gate, and now Mbeumo wants to go to United as well. But the fact that, and we can transition into this now, Thomas Frank has been appointed the new manager for Tottenham Hotspur after they sacked Ange, which I'm not mad at. I think we touched on it a bit last week, how I think the time was right for him to go. But Thomas Frank, the former Brentford manager, very exciting manager. Brentford have been overachieving for years because of his system. He just brings in new players to replace their best players, and they just keep getting it done. But, of course, his best player last year was Bryan Mbeumo, who now is on the transfer market and is looking for a new team. And United looked like number one on his list, but now that Frank has gone to Tottenham, it looks like Tottenham have gotten back in the race for Mbeumo, so he can reunite with his manager. And it's looking like there's potential he goes there instead of United because they're more willing to put up 70 mil for him. So I don't know exactly which way that's going to go, but for you as a United fan, do you want Mbeumo 1, and 2, what's like the max you would spend on him, or else you're like, okay, whatever, just go to Tottenham?
I don't think we should go for Mbeumo unless if we sell some players. If we sell a Garnacho, a Rashford, 70 mil is just too much for, not having sold anyone in our squad yet. So, and honestly, I think having that relationship with Thomas Frank and also the European football, given Tottenham won the Europa League, I think if he picks Tottenham, like, I don't really blame him. It kind of makes sense given the situation. The only reason I think he would go for Man U is if he really did care about the project and or also wanted a new coach and saw Ruben Amorim as maybe offering something that Thomas Frank didn't.
That's fair. I do think, and I forgot about that, that is probably the major selling point of Spurs. Basically, that whole final when it came down to United versus Spurs, who gets European football or specifically Champions League as well, and also gets the financial boost that comes with getting Champions League. So now they have a little more spending power in the window. And I think, honestly, if United win that game, I think the Mbeumo signing is pretty much guaranteed. You probably would have already confirmed that at this point. But now, Spurs having that leverage is interesting. And I honestly, I would not blame him for going to Spurs. I think both teams, there is a fit there. I think in United system, if you have Cunha as like your left 10 and Mbeumo as your right 10, and then you play, ideally, I know you guys want to get another striker in, but then you probably still have to play Hoyland or Xerxes as like your central number 9. I still think that's more exciting, and you will get a lot of goals from Cunha and Embuemo, so you actually don't need Hoyland to be the most clinical striker of all time in that system. And same with Spurs. If they maintain, I think it's looking like they're going to keep Matthias Tell, who's like that loan from Bayern. It seems like they confirmed he's staying, or they made that a permanent. I think Son might be staying, but even if he's like more rotational this year, Solanke up top, and then if you have a rotation of Embuemo and like Brennan Johnson on the right, that's an exciting attack too from Spurs. So I think both teams, I could see the fit, and I think for him, if it comes down to I want to play European football, fair enough. There's not much you could really do to argue with that. So I'm very curious. That's probably going to be one of the bigger Premier League signings of the summer, because he's one of the best players in the league based on last season, and he could be going to two teams that really need a boost to get back up the table. So I'm going to be keeping my eyes on that for sure. Another quick one I wanted to mention, when I originally wrote this, I thought this would be more now, but it's looking like he's stalling a bit. Reports are saying it's still going to happen, but Zubamendi from Sociedad in La Liga, it's been talked about forever that he's like, when the season's over, he's going to Arsenal. Like it's pretty much confirmed. But now it's looking like, he might have a little bit of cold feet, because apparently, because of his performances, Real Madrid have been looking at him. And a Spanish player, when Real Madrid come knocking, you always got to take that into consideration. And now it's looking like if they can make it work, he'd rather go to Madrid. But let's just talk about it. One, you could touch on Madrid as well, but let's just talk about it. If he were going to Arsenal, which looks like that's still the leading spot for him, how that buffs that team going into next year, who already have Rice, Odegaard, obviously. I think they're keeping Partey into next year. Beefs and Marino, who probably goes back to being a midfield striker as he played for like half of last year, how that buffs that Arsenal midfield.
To be honest, I haven't seen that much of Zubamendi play. From what I have seen, I mean, certainly a solid player, but I mean, with Arsenal and just their project and what's going on, I mean, we touched on it before. It's like, how much more can they adjust what they already have, which on paper should have already won them the Prem and the Champions League? And I don't immediately think of their midfield necessarily as the problem. I don't think signing, from what I've seen of Zubamendi, would solve that. I've also seen Arsenal linked with other midfielders, including a Greek wonder kid named I'm blanking his name. I think it's like Konstantinos or Konstalas or something like that. Some Greek shit. Yeah, I know. But it's like that's not exactly what I think is what they should be doing right now. So honestly, if he went to Madrid, then you got to wonder there. Is he getting playtime? Because Madrid's roster right now is absolutely stacked. I think a project more like Barca might be a better option if you're staying within La Liga, because that's already a younger team, and I think could use maybe a bit more rotation in their roster. So that's kind of how I view this situation. I'm curious what you think.
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't consider Barca, but that actually makes sense to me as well. I agree. Madrid, I mean, I get it. You're Spanish. Madrid, it always, how can you say no? But realistically, like you're saying, the fit there, I mean, of course they can use a defensive midfielder. Anyone can, but they just have so much depth in the midfield, unless they're continuing to play Valverde out on the right, which that's its own situation. Madrid have to sort out their front line more than anything, and their whole system's probably going to change with Xabi Alonso coming in. So where that even fits in, you're already trying to find, how do you play Camavinga, Tchouaméni, Bellingham, Valverde all on the same team? Assuming none of them are playing in the front line, then you still got to sort out your front line, staying or going or whatever. Trent's now coming in, so you finally got your Carvajal replacement. How do you fit in Zubamendi to get significant minutes in that team? I don't truly understand. But it always couldn't hurt to have depth. So I'm sure they wouldn't mind. But for him, as a player, it doesn't really make sense. Arsenal, I get it in the sense of, I think Arsenal have had this dilemma with Declan Rice, where it's like, is he our 6 or is he our left 8? Because Odegaard always plays as the right 8, and then they have like a kind of rotation where sometimes Rice will play 6, and then maybe Marino's playing the left 8, but then Marino went to striker, so you might have Partey as your 6, and Declan Rice is your left 8. I think there's a debate of like, is he better as a 6 or is he better as an 8? I think we saw in the Champions League, he's done some great things as an 8. Just box to box, let him just roam as much as possible. So I think if you bring in a Zubimendi, that confirms, okay, we have our lockdown 6. Declan Rice can play 8. But even with that being said, I don't know if that's like a league winning signing, which I think is kind of what you were hinting at. Like, sure, it improves Arsenal and it makes their midfield probably rock solid, as in those are their 3 starters: Odegaard, Rice, Zubimendi, and then you have Partey to come off the bench. But yeah, I don't know if that's what's gonna put them over the edge for next season. It really, I think, comes down to striker for them, and I know they're looking at Gyökeres, they're looking at Sesko from Leipzig. I think if they can bring one of those guys in, then I'm like, okay, now you're going band for band with Liverpool and City for next year's championship. But I agree. I don't know. I mean, if they have the money, why not? Bring in Zubimendi and bring in a striker. Why not? It can never hurt. But I think if you had to prioritize one, I think the striker is way more of an issue than defensive midfield. But I can understand why they're going for it. But yeah. Anyway, the last 2 things I wanted to mention, these ones are a little quicker because one was a relegation release. Was Chelsea have confirmed Liam Delap from Ipswich because they got relegated. They were able to get him for only 30 million. I know a couple other teams were looking at him in the Premier League, potentially being Manchester United, and a few other teams as well. I think there's a whole striker carousel. All these teams are looking for it. But what do you think about that move for Chelsea? The price tag, the fit, maybe. We still have Jackson, so we could be looking at a rotation between them. But any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, one, I remember the rumors when he was maybe going to go to United were saying like 50 mil. So I just want to point out the United tax strikes once again. 30 mil, I think that's fair. I was never excited about the prospect for him in a United team. But within Chelsea, honestly, I have to wait and see. That's one I have to wait and see on. I'm sure he will do well, but I mean, he's just a player that I think I need to see how he works with, an elite squad around him. Going from Ipswich to Chelsea will obviously be a huge adjustment. And I think Chelsea, as we have seen, they've had a very rocky road across the past few seasons. So I think it's a good addition to the squad, especially for the price. I'm just with him. It's someone I want to wait and see with.
That's fair. I love it. I honestly love it. Not because I love the player necessarily. Like, I think he's solid. 12 goals for a relegated team. I gotta respect it. And like you said, if you put like actual functioning Premier League level players around him, maybe he could be looking at 15 goals, which you never could sniff at as a starting Premier League striker. But I think because of the price specifically, I love the move. Because even if he goes on to be just decent or even below average for 30 million, I think that's a gamble that's worth taking. I think, because especially given the strikers on the market, Osimhen looks like he wants some crazy wages for one, and like the fee is going to be crazy. Gyökeres is going for some crazy numbers. Sesko, they're trying to quote like 80 million for an unproven striker, pretty much. Ekitike, I think, coming out of Frankfurt, he's looking like he's going for a decent amount as well. Just the amount of strikers out there that are going for crazy prices. I think if you can get one who's played in the Premier League, who's scored double digits in the Premier League. All these players are going to have to come prove themselves in the Premier League, even if they're on paper better. Double digits in the Premier League for a terrible team, and you get him for 30 mil, and he's played in the City Academy with Cole Palmer, so you have a little bit of familiarity there. I think that's a gamble worth taking, especially because we don't need him to come in and be our starter and fire right away. I think United's a little tougher, like you said, because you already have 2 young strikers there who aren't necessarily. I mean, Xerxes, he's getting his feet under him, but there's a scoring they aren't like the most prolific scorers. You're saying, oh, let's bring in another third young striker and say we're putting all our hopes on you to score. I think that's a recipe for disaster. But I think with Chelsea, if you go, okay, one game's Jackson, one game's Delap, one game Jackson, I think it's a much more healthy system to bring him into. So as a Chelsea fan, I love the move, even if it doesn't work out. It's not too much sweat off our back in terms of the price. And I think honestly, Chelsea's still looking at bringing in one of those other bigger name strikers. I think the lap was so cheap that we're like, if we can get one of those bigger names for 60 mil, then even then we haven't spent too much on that. I don't think we necessarily need it, but I know they want someone maybe more surefire goals because Jackson's a little iffy on that front, and the lap is still young. So I like the move, but we'll see exactly how it pans out. Because like you said, it's still a gamble at the end of the day, so we'll see. But the last one I wanted to touch on, just real quick, is the legend of the league. We talked about him when he confirmed that he's leaving the league. I just wanted to mention this. KDB has officially signed for Napoli on a 2-year deal. I know we were discussing maybe he'll go to MLS, maybe he'll go to Saudi. But it looks like he's like, I want to go link up with Goat McTominay in Serie A, and maybe we can go back to back. You never know.
Two Manchester legends, man.
You know what I'm saying? They say, hey, there's a little connection there. Conte rarely goes back to back. He usually comes in, wins in his first team, and the second year it all falls apart. So maybe KDB can come and sort that out. And I think that's an interesting league for KDB to go to. Way less demanding than the Premier League. I mean, not to hate on Serie A. It has its own demands, but in terms of the structure of the league, way more defensive, more time. I think he'll have. I think it may be a little easier on his body, so he can extend his career instead of saying, "Oh, I'm gonna try to stay in the Premier League," and then next year he's injured in the first month, and then that's wraps. I think he can still extend his career a little bit in Serie A, and still be a solid player. And when he's healthy, he's still creating chances like it's nobody's business. So I think that's fun to see him, and because they won the league, they'll be in the Champions next year. I think that's a fun move so we can continue to see Kevin De Bruyne in Europe at least. If he went to Saudi or the MLS, it's kind of like the end of it, pretty much. So.
Yeah. I hope this honestly becomes the example for players that age to go to Serie A. I think, one, they could maybe use some of the Prem's experience and talent within their league. And then I also think, kind of what you mentioned, it's nice as a spectator to still see these players on the European stage at these tournaments and not playing for like a league that has 1% of the viewership and of the skill. So I like this move. I'm definitely I've been wanting to pay more attention to Serie A and watch more games, and this is kind of just further incentivizing me to do so.
Sure, that's a great point too. I do definitely want to check out Serie A more because this year I feel like I missed out on like such an exciting title race, and I think next year, like with Inzaghi leaving, with like I assume Napoli are going to be the favorites, but AC Milan are always a mess. And then you have Roma, who are trying to get back into it. Juventus, who are Thiago Motta. I think, Serie A could be super fun next year, especially if you get to watch the midfield, Goat McTominay and De Bruyne. I mean, I might have to tune in every week. You never know. That could be fun for sure. And maybe we'll do a little bit of coverage. If there's anything interesting happening in Serie A, we'll try to stick to that at least a little. Maybe not as much as the Prem, but at least a little bit. So that'll be fun.